Welcome to the Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host. Here's our format. A bunch of guys sitting around a bar. There's no bar. Having drinks. There's no drinks either. But we're talking business, and you, the audience, are listening in. The Best of Investing is actually a radio show that has been around since August 2010, and it airs every Saturday on Fox News Radio, 9:10 a.m. at 1 p.m. Now, we're not a political show. We're strictly business, so everyone will be happy with that. We'll have various speakers, guest speakers, attorneys, accountants, economic advisors. The cool thing about this is that you're actually getting to see scenes behind the scenes. So we all have headphones on because we're recording a radio show that is going to be airing on the air on radio. But in addition, you get to see what happens during the commercial breaks, how we prepare for the next segment. So it's a lot of fun. There's going to be a lot of levity because I like to try to throw a little bit of humor in there because, just business by itself sometimes gets a little boring. So you got to always kind of break things. Remember, I'm Edward Brown, wishing you the best of investing. Are you ready? Let's go. Welcome. You're listening to the Best of Investing on News Talk 910. This is the show where we present valuable information about real estate, the financial markets, and other economic business of the day. For those of you listening for the first time, here's our format. A few guys sitting around a bar having drinks without the drinks, talking business with you, the audience, listening in. I'm your host, Edward Brown, and I'm honored to have as my co-host Mark Hanf of Pacific Private Money and Brian Burke of Praxis Capital. Ready for this? Today's trivia theme is famous voices from the movies. We've received request for more Edward Brown voiceovers. Don't you love it?
Sure.
It's gonna
Obviously, they haven't heard him before.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Now, today's special guest is Mitchell Brooks, and Mitchell Brooks is a managing partner for Resolute Security Group. He's had 27 years of corporate security management and law enforcement experience, and has been a global leader in providing security services to a host of Fortune 100 companies. During his tenure in law enforcement, he served as a detective, K-9 officer, and field training officer, and is recognized as an expert in specialized training in the areas of narcotics, investigations, and woof woof K-9 procedures. Mitchell, welcome to the Best of Investing.
Thank you.
All right.
Well, interesting business that you're in, and I'm just curious, how do you get into such a business? It seems like that would be something that would be interesting to a lot of people, but hard to crack into.
No, it's not necessarily hard to crack into. You just have to have a desire to be in security. Law enforcement helps. A lot of people that are in the private security realm are from the law enforcement background types. But we do have a lot of people in our field now that are actually just private citizens, and there's actually classes now at different colleges for security management. So they are learning about security, and there's a lot of different avenues in the security industry. I mean, you've got the physical security, you've got IT security technology,
right.
And there's field work, there's behind a desk work, investigations. There's a lot of different areas that security really the tentacles seep into.
So it's not this typical situation that you would think of where a guy tries to become a police officer and can't, so that he goes into security.
Well, that happens too.
Okay.
Some people just for whatever reasons can't make it in law enforcement, which we all know here that law enforcement is a very stressful occupation.
Stuff to get into.
Yeah, I was very fortunate enough to make it. My two sons now are in law enforcement also, so it's one of those arenas where not everybody's cut out to be that. But in the private security arena, it's tough also at times, especially being an owner of a security company. But it's a lot of enjoyment in helping businesses and individuals protecting their assets.
To go from law enforcement to security is a natural transition, but to go from law enforcement to business owner is a bit of a different transition, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But there's a lot of things that are very similar. As a police officer, you're responsible for a beat. You're responsible to keep that clean. And as you move into detectives, then you have a whole caseload. It's the same thing, managing time, managing resources, the same thing as business, except you're managing money. In the private sector, money is really important, but in the public sector, as we all know, the government spends a lot of money, and it's our tax money at times.
I thought you were going to say that you were in charge of the beatdown, but
No.
Okay.
You're watching too many movies.
Too many movies, yeah.
So why do businesses even need security?
There's a lot of reasons, but the most important reason is protect their assets. And assets are anything that a company has that's very important to them. The most important asset is their people, from the CEO all the way down to the staffers in the office and out in the field. You need to protect your assets. In this competitive climate that we live in now, things happen. There's a lot of things that can potentially happen to a business and their assets. A very simple one, workplace violence. Huge issue in our society
Especially
now.
at the post office.
Post office. We just recently had a workplace violence incident in the Bay Area at the school over in Oakland. And there's a lot of things that can be done to prevent that, and measures that can be put in place. Training to start off with. Security, that's part of the security realm, is training. The signs.
So we're not talking mall cop here. We're talking bodyguard, right?
We like to use an industry term, executive protection agent.
Got it.
Okay, more professional sounding. It's just not a bodyguard. A bodyguard, when you hear the word bodyguard, most people think of a bouncer, a big, burly person.
I'm thinking Kevin Costner and Whitney Houston.
He wasn't a big guy, but actually, you are a big guy.
And you know what? That movie really portrays very well at times the role of a bodyguard or executive protection agent. Most people, when they think of somebody who is actually protecting somebody else, they think of the biggest guy in the room who can lift the whole building up. And that's not necessarily the case. You want somebody who can actually blend into an environment and really is there but isn't there.
Well, to diffuse the situation, mostly. I mean,
Have some verbal judo.
Okay. I can give you another example that most people can relate to, because when you start to talk about executive protection, think about the movie just a few years ago, Taken.
Oh, I love that movie.
You remember the beginning of the movie?
Yeah,
Yes.
Neeson, yeah.
You remember at the beginning of the scenes when he's protecting the singer?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And what happened? He wasn't a big guy, was he?
No.
He was just an average individual, but he has that highly skilled training sets that help him maneuver through that area. But he also had a law enforcement background. He was a federal covert op, basically.
So on executive protection, are we talking mostly celebrities or just other high-ranking corporate executive types?
No, not actually. I learned a lot when I was in the police department. I went to a few schools as far as dignitary protection put on by the Department of Justice.
Dignitary, I like that.
Yeah, but it's just not, protection's not for just your CEO or a VIP person. It can be for just about anybody, and through my time in this business, we've provided protection for those individuals also, but also for just ordinary people because of certain threats that occur at their business or in their occupation. I can give you one instance several years back where we had a shooting with one of our particular clients back east. And at that time, they didn't know who the shooter was, but they thought he was, or she, was basically singling out their employees. Well, we put protection, actual officers, with these individuals around the clock, and they were just your ordinary retail clerks. They just didn't know who was the target. So, and that went on for about 3 weeks, and finally the police were able to solve it. But it's just not for CEOs. The reason that protection is for CEOs, it's critical that those folks are never embarrassed. Some of these people run corporations such as Microsoft. If Bill Gates, something happened to him, just think what that would do possibly to the stock price.
Well, that's, it's funny. I thought about that where you have protection for ex-presidents, and I'm thinking, Carter and Clinton, and I'm thinking, who cares? Why does the Secret Service why do we have to pay for that? But then I realized, if let's say Clinton gets abducted, all the information that he has in his brain, I mean, there's a lot of security for the United States that has to get protected.
Exactly.
Well, plus it's embarrassing too. Just it's a national embarrassment if your ex-president.
Well,
gets
that's a
moved
good point. Well, so here's a question, Mitchell. Before we go to commercial break, I want to see if we can answer this one. How do you quantify the savings? You know, to the risk reward. Like, you know, how much does it cost, and how does a company figure out if it's worth it?
Well, the cost, you know, is in the private sector is a main driving factor of security. And when we sit down with a client, we like to sit in a setting just like this, just not without the microphones, and discuss exactly what they want. You know, you can get the Cadillac coverage, or you can get what we refer to as the Yugo coverage.
Oh wait, hold on. Does that mean that we'll protect you so you don't get killed, but we won't protect you if you get hurt?
No,
I'm cheesing.
Yeah, no. Well, let me just clarify a little
Protect
bit.
just your arms, but your legs are open
Right.
season.
Well, let me just clarify. There's different programs you can put in place, and when I sit down with a client and we're talking about their security needs and what exactly they're looking for, we can layer the security approach. We can do things that aren't as costly. When you look at the cost, security is not a profit center. It takes money off of the profits to provide that security.
Sure.
But in the long run, when you start to look at security, just think of loss prevention agents. They stop shrinkage out of retail stores, which saves their customers money down the road. Think of cameras, surveillance cameras in a grocery store. Let's say you have slip and falls, workers' comp. If you can show that something didn't occur, that camera just saved you money. There's a lot of different access control systems to keep people out of buildings. So there's a lot of
Okay,
avenues.
we're going to continue this more with Mitchell Brooks, who's quite the awesome expert in security here. We're going to go to our first commercial break, and here's our first trivia question. Again, we are talking about, what are we talking about here? We're talking about trivia. The trivia theme is famous voices from the movies. Ready? In the movie 2001, A Space Odyssey, what was the name of the computer that would say, Dave, just what do you think you're doing, Dave? Well, welcome back to the Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Mark Hanf and Brian Burke. And when we went to the first commercial break, we asked this first trivia question. In the movie 2001, A Space Odyssey, what was the name of the computer that would say, Dave, just what do you think you're doing, Dave? Everyone, what's the answer?
Dave's not here.
I don't have the first clue.
You never,
You don't
no
know?
sports, no movies.
Really?
Come on, Al. And Mitchell, you were
Yes.
talking about being you own a security company. Give us some fun stories on radio here.
Well, one of the things about private security is you don't want any fun stories, but you know, I have a few. If you have fun stories, usually you're not going to have many clients. So your job isn't to make your job is to make sure that your clients in whatever you're doing are not put in compromising positions, whether it's protecting a CEO or if it's protecting their property, any of those things. I mean, you don't want to have a security guard standing outside of a building at night or inside a building and the suspects are coming through the roof stealing everything while he's there. That's kind of embarrassing. You know, when you're in law enforcement, first thing that happens when you're in training session, you're watching a video, you sit down and your eyes close. That's usually how it goes, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it goes in the private sector also with our guards. So we always tell them no, but you know, the client, you know, always insists. So, but as far as funny stories go, you know, we've had a few instances, like I said, and that's the thing about security. Security is an inconvenience at times for people because it's rules, and we have to live within those rules. And
It's just airport security that's
Yeah.
it's
Well, that can be a time.
TSA, yeah.
But you know, it's there for a reason. It's there to protect you. And I agree. You know, I've worked on both sides of the fence, and I understand. You know, I'm a citizen also when I go through the airport, but sometimes it gets a little annoying. And there are better ways to do it. And every day,
Especially those pat downs.
yeah, every day
Where
we're
you go?
every day we're getting better in our security and our approach. I mean, things change drastically. It seems like from year to year.
But sometimes just the fact that you've got a security guy there with a gun, especially, is a deterrent. Just having presence, isn't it?
It is a deterrent at times, but you can put a person out on a post with a gun, and as we were talking off during the break, you can put somebody who's not as trained. So are they really a deterrent, or could they become part of the victim pool? Think about it.
Or are they the ones that just brought the weapon to the crime?
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
Can I borrow your gun?
So, and in our business, we do too, the company that I'm involved in, we do have uniformed guards. We have armed guards. We do investigating, we do consulting, we do surveillance. But when we put somebody out with a gun, we run them through training programs. We make sure that they know how to use the weapon. We like to hire a lot of retired law enforcement people for our high-end jobs. We actually hire private citizens, but they've gone through a lot of different schools. And there's several schools across the country that individuals can go to and get the skill sets necessary to do this kind of work.
Do you hire guys like Jason Statham who can like totally kick your butt if they don't like?
Who is that?
That's an actor that does all those movies where with a lot of kung fu action.
Oh,
You guys don't watch
or
TV.
Jet Li. That guy apparently was so fast in the Lethal Weapon movies, they actually had to slow the camera down. He was so...
No, again, like we were talking earlier, it's not the biggest person. It's the most talented person. And usually the most talented people, are just average people. You wouldn't know it. Look at your Navy SEALs. Those guys are just average guys. There's some big guys there too, but they're average guys. And that's the misconception that the public has about security. It's biggest is always the best. Not necessarily.
It's the bouncer. You
Yeah.
know, in movies, the bouncer is always really big.
But every time you see the entertainers, their executive protection are always very, very big. Just coincidentally.
Well,
so
again,
it's-
I think part of it too, again, is just the impression, like, I don't want to mess with that big guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, but look at dignitaries. Look at the president. When you see the president on television and you see his protection detail,
No, they're just regular looking guys.
nobody sticks out. They
Yeah.
just blend in. And those individuals are highly, highly trained.
Like you said, you want it to be boring. You don't want all this, I got the biggest guy, he's going to, beat the crap out of you. It's the smartest guy who can diffuse a situation before it happens.
You definitely want it to be boring. We've had cases where we've come to confrontations. You try to avoid that at all possible, but it does happen. I know of a couple of one company that they were doing a shareholders meeting, and it became very heated. The company was
contentious, huh?
Yes. Ended up the CEO got a pie in his face. So and they had protection there. They had agents there, but that happens.
But was it a loaded pie? Thanks for joining us in the studio.
Oh, thank you for
interesting
having
stuff.
me.
All right. Welcome. You're listening to the Best of Investing on News Talk 910. This is the show where we present valuable information about real estate, the financial markets, and other economic business of the day. For those of you listening for the first time, here's our format. A few guys. In this case, we got 4 of us today. What are we doing? We're like, it's like we're at a bar having drinks without the drinks, but we're talking business with you, the audience listening in.
I'm drinking.
You're drinking? Okay, excellent. I'm your host, Edward. Well, we have too much fun here. I'm your host, Edward Brown, and I'm pleased to have as my co-host Mark Hanf of Pacific Private Money and Russell Rosner of Equity Coalition. And today's trivia theme is famous quotes, who said it? And today's guest is Bennie Bach, who is actually a descendant of Johann Sebastian Bach, who is going to discuss the economics of climate change and how it affects business. And Russell, he was your guest, so why don't you continue on?
Well, thanks, Edward. Yeah, well, before we introduce our guest here, I just wanted to maybe frame the show slightly, which is that, this is a show about investing, and we're hoping to discuss opportunities and investment options that might be created by rising temperatures or climate change in general. I think that this really isn't a show about what's causing climate change. It's a show about, basically investing. And I think that to give a real-life example, if we all owned a store in the middle of the desert in a small town, and next week we knew it was going to pour rain, we'd probably go out and buy some umbrellas. So this is a show about figuring out what umbrella to buy, I guess. So without further ado, we have Dr. Bennie Bach here. He is a physics professor and lab director at the University of Nevada. Dr. Bach was just recently in the Andes Mountains of Peru, helping atmospheric scientists take snow and ice samples, so core samples, from high altitude peaks. In addition to his academic interests, Dr. Bach is an entrepreneur who owned and founded 2 high-tech manufacturing firms in optics. And without further ado, Bennie, take it away.
All right, thanks for inviting me, guys.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Okay, now I've told you beforehand that we're very nice to our guests. We don't get we try to get too controversial, but I do have to ask you about climate change.
Okay.
And let's say all of us agree that the Earth is getting warmer. So we're not talking about whether or not it's getting warmer. Let's just all agree that it is. My question is, how much does man have an impact on that? Because we've gone through at least 5 major ice ages in the last 25,000, 30,000 years, and man wasn't driving automobiles 15,000 years ago. Go ahead.
Right. Yeah. How do we know? I guess
So how do we know? Yeah, correct. So the climate in the past has both warmed and cooled. We've had warm periods, we've had glacial periods. Man was not the cause of those, okay? But currently we're going through a warming period, but we don't believe that it's part of the natural environment. We do believe that it's man-made.
Okay, and why would you think that it's not natural?
Okay, so what they've done, and this is, in recent news, right? We had a scientific climate skeptic just recently change his mind when he's reviewed the data.
Now he changed his mind from saying it wasn't that there wasn't even global warming to now saying that it was global warming. Right?
He's done two things actually. So when we're referring to Dr. Richard Mueller from Lawrence Berkeley Laboratories, so he stated, yes, okay, I've reviewed the data and the climate is warming. He's also reviewed the data and he's also said, and he believes that man is mostly responsible for that climate warming.
So for all the other climate warming situations over the last so many thousand years where it warmed over 300-400 years at a time and man wasn't, I mean, it just seems to me that we're such a small part of this universe, how we could have that much
such
of an impact.
Significant impact. So, what he did is, one, he looked at, so we don't have records that go back 1 million years.
Sure.
Man hasn't been around. He did use records that went back to about the time of the American Revolution.
Benjamin Franklin's records, actually.
Yeah,
yes.
correct. So we are able to look back that far, okay? So we're not really able to look back and see what man's influence was, 100,000 years ago, okay? But he did go back and he looked at the weather record, and he went back and he looked at variations in solar output, okay, because the sun could have an effect.
Sure.
He looked at variations from, say, volcanic output and what volcanoes had done in the past to change the environment.
Yeah, because Mount St. Helens in 1980 was a pretty major volcanic eruption.
Correct.
Yeah, and the temperatures worldwide went down by a few degrees right after that, by the way.
Okay.
So
example.
with their analysis, his current analysis, he is able to look at those various effects independently. So he's able to look at solar variation, solar variation does cause the climate to warm or cool.
Well, interestingly enough, when you just mentioned about how with Mount St. Helens the temperature dropped. Now,
Right.
could one reason be that with volcanic? I'm not a scientist, but I'm just kind of trying to add some logic here. If you have a lot of volcanic ash, wouldn't that kind of put a sort of a covering over to where the sun couldn't penetrate?
So
Okay.
that it basically
I
insulated.
just got my doctorate.
You
Thank you
just
very
got
much.
it. Yeah,
But there's something to say about Mount St. Helens. It was a big enough volcanic eruption to shield the Earth from the sun's rays and
Yeah.
cool it, but it wasn't big enough to actually entrap the atmosphere for a long period of time. And in the past, you were mentioning that climate change couldn't have been caused by man because it didn't exist. 10,000, 100,000, well, millions of years ago. So what a lot of scientists are saying right now is that at least in one specific instance, a super volcano erupted, which would have been 100 times larger than Mount St. Helens, and actually enveloped the Earth in ash to the point where the Earth heated up because it had no way to exit the temperature or the higher temperatures through the atmosphere.
Okay.
So he's able to look at the records, environmental records, weather records back a couple hundred years, and he's able to distinguish volcanic from solar from human interaction. So basically, greenhouse gases.
But don't you
And when you plot, what
Go
he's
ahead.
doing, what he did is he plotted that change in temperature versus humans' CO2 emissions, and those two effects track. They correlate to each other.
Okay, but wouldn't you think that over if you want to use millions of years. I mean, I'm of more of a young Earth type person, but let's take that for a minute. If you look at millions of years compared to 250 years, isn't that a really small sample, even if it's exactly correlated?
Correct. So it is a small sample.
Yeah.
But they said, if you look at the global warming, you say, well, I postulate it's human effect, human emissions, global greenhouse gases. The environmentalists, environmentally, what mechanism would you suggest, or what the skeptics would suggest for that would be the environmental cause? And they really haven't suggested
we were
one.
mentioning, just before we started about how, the Earth is traveling thousands of miles or millions of miles per hour through space. I mean, our whole universe is traveling, and just a small degree off from the sun will make substantial changes.
Yeah.
Right?
So are you referring to the orbit or the inclination of the Earth?
Well, just everything. I mean, isn't all of our galaxy traveling through space, or is it just stuck?
Our solar system, we're in the Earth's moving whatever 900 miles out.
Okay, Mark, you haven't said anything yet. You're just I think you're just postulating all this.
Well, I'm curious. I'm waiting to hear Dr. Ben talk about what have there actually been measurements of human-created particulates that they've measured in the atmosphere that would
so they're
cause them to say, well, this is man-made.
Yes. So people have been taking atmospheric samples for a very long time, and they've recorded these, and they have for a very long period of time been noticing that the CO2 has been increasing with our industrialization. So people back for hundreds of years have been taking grass samples, they've been taking air samples, and I do believe these guys were from the, I think they're from the observatory in Hawaii, and they've been taking collecting samples for 60 years.
Okay, well, this is all very good stuff, Benny. Very, very interesting, and we're going to cut to a commercial break. When we come back, we'll get into the business side of things, because we want to hear about how to invest in greenhouses. No, just whatever is going to be,
Not investing in
greenhouses. There we go. That's right. Oops. I'd be on the losing end of that one, wouldn't I? Okay, remember today's trivia theme is famous quotes. Who said it? See, now we have to get to a little levity here. Okay, here's our first commercial break. Here's our first trivia question. Who reportedly said, "Et tu, Bluto"? Oh no, that was Popeye. What I meant to say was, who said, "Et tu, Brute"? And we'll be right back. Excellent.
Awesome.
Good.
Yeah, that was a good point, Mark. Yeah,
Welcome back to the Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Mark Hahn, Russell Rosner, and our guest, Bennie Bach. And when we cut to the first commercial break, we asked this trivia question. Who reportedly said, "Et tu, Brute"? Anyone?
Oh, the Caesars. wasn't
Caesar?
it?
One of them. Caesar's dressing. Who? Come on, which one?
Caesar Romero.
Augustus.
No, it was Julius Caesar.
Oh, that's
It
right.
was just a normal one. It wasn't a trick question. Benny,
Yes.
now that we're talking about the global climate changing, can you help us out from an investing standpoint?
Okay, so the World Bank currently estimates that the worldwide gross domestic product will probably be affected by like $750 to $100 billion a year, okay, in terms of lost productivity, lost crops, anomalous weather, floods, we're talking droughts, okay?
disasters.
Disasters, basically, environmental disasters, and things that we have to spend money on to mitigate, all right? So, as far as you look at that, you're like, there's an opportunity there, right? It's going to cost somewhere, like I said, between $75 billion to $100 billion a year.
Well, I know, like when they had like in oranges back in Florida, where you had, it's one of those, what do they call it, elastic demand type thing. When oranges, when everybody lost half their crop, they all made more money because the price more than doubled.
Right, lemons too.
Yeah.
Lemons too. Okay.
So basically, there's probably some opportunity there, and to figure out where the opportunities are, where the call them green growth opportunities are. I think it's useful to look at the way people use their energy. What's causing these greenhouse gases? Okay, or what's the source of the greenhouse gases? And for the average American emits about 20 tons of CO2 a year. About 50% of that is just things that you have control of. Your house, how you heat your house, how you drive, how you cook your food, what kind of food you use.
Oh, okay, I thought for a minute it was breathing.
That's breathing.
Breathing and stuff coming out the other end. Sloughing, as you say.
And then about 15% of your footprint is your work, basically. Or I should say like 25%, sorry, of the emissions is you going to work.
Like in my car?
You're actually your computer at work, the power at work,
See.
the lights on need to be at work. And you don't really have all that. I mean, certainly you can influence your employer, but you don't really have control of that. Then another, about 10% of your emissions, which is about 2 tons, actually comes from public infrastructure, like lights on in City Hall, public transportation, street lights, another thing that you really don't have control over. And about 20% or 4 tons of a person's emissions, CO2 emissions, comes from actually the things you buy. And a large portion of that is actually we're not talking plastic toys or slippers, we're talking about food. A lot of those emissions come from food production.
I'm sorry, but I have to eat.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But it's
Survival
how
of the fittest, baby.
Yeah, it's true. You do have to eat, and where no one's asking you to cut back on how much you eat.
Okay,
But
yeah.
if you eat differently, for example, the majority of those CO2 emissions actually come from the production of commercial fertilizers, and from the production of processed foods.
And also the transportation of the food to the marketplace
sure.
as well.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
Actually, the transportation is actually relatively efficient compared to the big energy hogs are actually the commercial fertilizer and the food processing. It's actually cheaper and more environmentally friendly to ship the tomatoes from California to Wisconsin than it is to have greenhouses in Wisconsin. You have less CO2 output from your transportation than if you're trying to.
Oh, I see.
grow.
You mean it's better to have more greenhouses concentrated in a more productive area than to try to grow food in a place like Wisconsin. Where it would be inefficient and using
inefficient,
more
yeah.
fertilizer than you would need.
It takes
I
more energy and all that.
And
Yeah.
Right.
It's more environmentally friendly to ship it there than to try to grow. It's to ship tomatoes to Wisconsin than try to grow them there
Oh,
during
I
the
see.
winter.
What about just nuclear?
So
Power plants type.
So nuke power plants, right? They don't emit CO2, do they?
I guess not.
They
No,
don't,
they
right?
don't.
So
They don't.
that's a low carbon energy source, right? Though some people are not into that, but it is a potential low
We should all
carbon
have
energy
nuclear
source.
power plants in our backyard. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Benny, and there's a whole industry, I guess, that has sprung up in the investment community, right? Around investments you can make that are basically green friendly, or there's even a Dow
Correct.
Jones Sustainability
Sustainability,
Index.
I went at that little diversion because I wanted to. So your footprint comes basically from the way you use energy. Okay, so if you wanted to invest green, if you want to look at green growth, one thing you would look at is low carbon energy sources. So we're talking solar, you're talking wind. Okay, there's one green investment sector. Another green investment sector potential is transportation. Looking at novel transportations or looking at novel technologies for transportation. We're talking
Bicycles.
well, that's not all that novel, but yes.
Do we have to drive a Prius?
You have to bicycling tomatoes to Wisconsin? No, I don't. Yeah,
A bicycle
it's not
milker
gonna-
too. Now that's more efficient.
Well, you know
There
what
you
is
go.
funny about it when you mentioned like a Prius, because I had talked to someone who is in the tire business, and they said, yeah, I don't understand. He goes, we love Priuses and other car hybrids because, but it's actually bad for the environment because they go through too many tires too quickly.
interesting.
Because the tires have to be a lot thinner in order to get that good gas mileage. But what happens is you go through tires so quickly, and tires, that ain't too friendly for the environment.
Piles of tires.
Piles of
no, they wouldn't.
tires.
Well, they're recyclable. So
So we're talking one potential green investment sector, like I said, is low carbon, okay, or renewable energy. Other one to look at is transportation. Actually, organic farming is another potential place to invest.
As if the government will let you
Sure.
farm. I mean, because
Right.
didn't they do something with the tomatoes, or just with fruits and vegetables, that they did something so that you can't just take the seeds and plant them? There's something weird going on. It used to be in the old days, you used to be able to just take seeds and plant and grow, but there's been some kind of genetic
It's like a
change.
seed
Oh, you mean-
tax?
Oh,
no,
you're
yeah.
talking about the genetically modified crops.
Like
that-
bananas. Bananas don't have seeds.
They're-
They're all basically
Off of trees.
clones of each other.
Yeah.
Okay.
There is no such thing as a banana seed.
Well, I know it comes from the tree.
Fun
Where did it
fact to
come
know
from?
and tell.
Yeah.
Yeah. From the banana tree, right?
Something like that.
Yeah, well, what I'm getting at is that they spent a lot of time creating very efficient banana trees, I
Oh,
guess.
okay.
And so 30 years ago, the Cavendish, I think it's
The
called.
Cavendish. Yeah,
that-
that's what we eat.
That's what we
now.
eat. That ended up pretty much taking over the whole banana market. In fact, your grandmother and great grandmother there were 4 or 5 different kinds of bananas that they could have eaten at the store when they were growing up.
Really?
Yeah, now we only have the one. But my point is that
Plantains are not bananas, right?
yeah, but these are really
plantains.
to a certain extent they're genetically modified bananas, and they don't have seeds. They just basically what's the word when they clone them, and that's how they create new crops. Fun fact number 47.
I guess coconuts don't have seeds either, but okay.
Yeah. Let's see. So we did energy, we did transportation, we did food. Also, there's investing potential in pollution controls, and those pollution controls they could be financial markets, as in carbon trading, or they could be in technology, in new technologies. People are working on carbon capture and sequestration.
Now, would that be? I don't want to get into politics, but do you think it would matter who gets into office?
Yes, without a doubt.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
I mean,
because
suddenly if Romney gets in, it's going to be like the hell with the environment.
so it's because there are subsidies, right? There's government subsidies. There's distorting subsidies. So you could have distorting subsidies that favor photovoltaics, or you could have distorting subsidies that favor fossil fuels. So yeah, it's definitely so. You have to pay attention to that if you're going to look for a green sector to invest in. Yeah, who's in
So
charge?
should people wait until after the election to decide?
Just
what they're-
take your money out and hide it in your mattress.
You
Yeah,
can
right
vote
now.
green.
Yeah, that's
vote
it.
green.
That's a good point.
Yeah, no, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to cut to our second commercial break. Benny, stay in the studio with us. It's kind of fun having you in here. I like
Thanks.
this. Okay, here is the second commercial break, and the trivia theme is famous quotes. Who said, "Please accept my resignation. I don't want to belong to any club that would accept me as a member." I can't quite say that the right way. Welcome back to the Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, and I'm here in the studio with Mark Hoff of Pacific Private Money and Russell Rosner of Equity Coalition, and Bennie Bach is still with us. Thank you very much. Thanks. Excellent segments there. And when we cut to the second commercial break, we asked this trivia question. Who said, "Please accept my resignation. I don't want to belong to any club that would accept me as a member"? All right, guys, who said that?
Benny Hill or
That'd be W.C. Fields.
No.
Oh, Groucho Marx.
Groucho Marx.
Okay.
Very good. All right.
I like Benny.
These are tough.
Me too. Yeah, these are tough. Right?
Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun.
Listen, last time we got so many phone calls that I said I was going to make these. The next one's going to be like, "What's my favorite color?" And if you don't guess it right, forget it. Okay. All right. Email time. Mark, we received an email for you that said, "In today's environment, how long-term a loan would you suggest I invest in?"
Because the banks, ever since the big meltdown in 2007 and 8, they really have kind of vacated that market. They're really not making loans other than consumer home loans these days. And so the private money sector, capitalism stepped in, and so companies like mine have come about in the last 4 or 5 years. Several new companies like Pacific have come around to make the loans to real estate investors, and the source of that capital are private individuals. Now, of course, we're living in effectively a zero interest rate environment where your savings aren't earning much, and the stock market, as we know, it goes up one week and down another week, and so there are ways for people to earn high yields, anywhere from 8 to 10% on their money monthly, and by making loans secured by Bay Area real estate. And so what's interesting about these loans is they're generally short term. And so in this environment where there's an awful lot of disagreement about what's going to happen in the economy in the coming years. Are we looking at potentially hyperinflation? Are we looking at? There's just a lot of unknowns out there and insecurity. So many of my investors don't want to invest long term, meaning 5 years, 7 years, 10 years out, but they like the idea of being able to earn high yields, i.e. 8 to 10%, by making these real estate secured loans for 12 months, 24 months, possibly even 36 months. We're talking about, and a 3-year loan in the hard money world is actually a fairly long-term loan. So for example, the type of loans we make are to people who are in that area of real estate where they're buying, fixing, and flipping property. And that is, believe it or not, has been a very strong demand for capital in the last couple of years, has been for investors, real estate investors buying, fixing, and flipping.
Well, the nice thing about the 3 years is that economics change so quickly that it's nice to not get locked in. And if you were to do a 25-year loan, there's nothing to stop the borrower in case interest rates go down for refinancing anyway.
Well, that's exactly right. So what's nice about investing in a hard money loan is that you don't tie up your money for long term. So the fix and flip market, for example, is generally you get your money back in less than a year. So I've got investors who really like that 6-month window. Then I've got investors who don't want to invest for less than a year. And then I've got investors who like the 2 years. So everyone has a little bit of a different appetite for the types of loans they'd like to fund. And the good news is that we get demands kind of all over the market. Now, the one area that we don't serve are those who are buying rental property and can't get a bank loan and would like maybe a 5 or 7 or 10 year. And so our particular company, at Pacific, we don't serve that. I think actually Russell's company might have some sources for longer term financing for that. But
Indeed, we do.
And so generally we're in the short term market. 8 to 10% returns to our investors. And this would be secured by Bay Area real estate with title insurance, with hazard insurance in their name. So you've got security and insurability factors there that make it a safety and security features are pretty compelling.
Sure, and especially if you're paying 10% monthly, that's 120% a year. No, I'm just kidding. I know.
Annualized.
Annualized. So yeah,
you get your interest monthly, but it's an annualized return between 8 to 10%.
0.83333% per month. Okay.
It is. Hard money lending used to have a much higher default rate in prior years, but right now our borrowers are pretty strong, and real estate prices are pretty stable right now.
Right now. Okay, Russell, we received an email for you. It says, how do you find the loans that your company invests in?
We work with hedge funds, we work with insurance companies, we actually do work with banks, believe it or not. And
you do larger loans.
We do much larger loans, but we don't mind doing smaller loans too. But we focus on the Western United States. And back to the question, when somebody is looking for a loan, they typically don't have a lot of options if they're looking for a loan that is something outside of the banks. So again, most people that find me will Google private money San Francisco or hard money San Francisco. Another way we get loans is that I actually have some staff members that are pretty entrepreneurial, and we sent an individual over to the courthouse steps in the various counties of California, and they met buyers directly and told them, hey, do you need financing? And we got some great leads that way. Another person that works on my staff is, I call her a dialer. Her job is to get on the phone and call up leads, and we interface quite a bit with real estate agents in the Bay Area who have clients that are investing.
Yeah, I would think that would be a good source, would be the real estate agents.
Right, so if there's any aspiring loan officers out there that are trying to drum up some business, real estate agents are a great referral source. And then finally, I think that people do find me through this very radio show and through my blog. And before I forget, we're going to go into some real detail here about investing in climate change, and I want to mention that Dr. Bach has put together a pretty extensive list of links that people can go to after the show. We obviously can't spell them all out here, so you can come to my website at www.equitycoalition.com, click on the blog button, and the show notes will be right there, and all the links will be right there too.
Excellent. Okay, we're going to cut to a quick break here, and when we come back, we'll get into just what else is going on economics-wise. And the theme today is Who Said It? Famous quotes. All right, who said this one? When I was a kid, my parents moved around a lot, but I always found them. I don't get any respect. And we will be right back. Excellent.
All right. I feel like I finally plugged myself.
Bennie Bach.
Yep.
Give them flowers.
The fly.
I'm catching the fly. The evil fly. It's the circle of life. Okay, you guys ready? 12 minutes to go. Welcome back to the Best of Investing. Again, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Mark Hunt, Russell Rosner, and today's guest, Bennie Bach, who's a scientist. Yes, quite. Okay, when we cut to the third commercial break, we asked this trivia question, and the theme is, who said it? Who said, when I was a kid, my parents moved around a lot, but I always found them?
You do him better.
Yeah.
I do
you're
him a
doing
little
good job.
better, yes. And the answer is?
Rodney Dangerfield.
Rodney Dangerfield. Very good. Okay. Mark, I think you wanted to ask Benny a question, didn't you?
Well, I think we were going to go a little bit further into some of the investment opportunities, Benny, and you were going to talk about segments, was that?
The segments, yeah, we were discussing sectors, various sectors as they exist, green sectors. And the question is now, how do you choose a green sector?
Yeah.
Why do you choose a green sector? And where do you find the information on those green sectors? Basically, so for advice for choosing a green sector, I'd choose a sector basically that you're interested in, that you have a personal interest. You're going to be a savvier investor, right? You're going to be a better stakeholder in that company. You'll be more up to date on the technologies and how that is evolving. So choose a sector that you have some kind of interest in.
I mean, like solar. I should
Solar.
invest in Solyndra, right?
Well, yeah, that was
Right.
Oops.
Yeah, or
Hey,
Prius.
well, what investment doesn't have a risk?
That's true.
What
That's true.
investment doesn't have a risk?
Yeah.
But yeah, well, there's an idea where you have to watch out for where a government puts its subsidies.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
where
But
policies
also,
are.
the other thing is like when you have, as I understand, and I could be wrong, but I understand like China came out with a whole bunch of cheap
Yes.
solar panels, and so
They
that kind
control
of,
the market right
yeah,
now.
and so that kind of really puts a skew. So you might be very interested in solar, but just investing in solar panels may not be the best from an investment standpoint.
Correct. Yeah.
Benny, you're a pretty savvy entrepreneur in your own right. So where do you see some of the opportunities in green investing to take advantage of this?
Right now, I'm most interested personally in the low carbon or renewable energies. All right, things like wind, things like solar. Not so much investing in the solar panels, but investing in locations where you can put those kinds of power plants, where you could put a wind plant, a wind farm, where you could put a solar farm. Those things are real opportunities.
Well, years ago, when they had tax shelters, I think the company was called Zond, and they came out with, when you see all of these wind, going out to the Delta and Livermore and all that, it's like they just produced thousands of these windmills. Some
Did
worked,
those
some
pay
didn't.
off though? Wasn't
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not really sure.
I don't know.
I know that there's been
All four of us, I don't
I'm
know.
not familiar with it.
But this is interesting. There's been a functioning solar electric plant creating electricity, and it was built in the late 1970s, and it's still
working?
this day working.
What do you think of hydroelectric?
So hydroelectric is another classic, right? Low carbon energy source.
Just have the river running through it.
Yeah, and there's environmental consequences to that, as far as fish habitat and natural habitat.
Oh, okay. Well, I understand some of them, they have a little protection so that the fish don't get caught in the
They have,
turbines.
right, well, they have fish ladders so that fish
Right.
can go back up the dam.
How do they get their little feet on those?
They have to get a little.
So Benny,
It's
how
not
do
the
you,
feet; it's the hands that are lacking.
So where do you find the green growth opportunities that you're speaking of?
So the best place to start for green growth opportunities is basically you could start on the web, where everybody goes, the World Wide Web, right?
Right.
So
And look at
there's a number of
Wikipedia.
places. Yeah, Wikipedia. Look at Wikipedia, which you will find all this stuff on Wikipedia. You can go to the Dow Jones has a sustainability index, which you can find, which is the Dow Jones Sustainability Index.
Did they have
And
any
you can look
mutual
at-
funds that specialize in
Yes.
that?
So
Okay.
we'll get to that.
Okay.
There's this is a search if you're doing it like independently, but there are you can go to the web and find various mutual funds that their focus are green funds and sustainable or socially acceptable.
Socially, yeah, because I know about like Calvert had some socially.
Yeah, Calvert's one.
Calvert's one. Yeah.
One has one, definitely.
Yeah. What? And there are some like, I don't want to call it fraudulent ones, but they're ones that call themselves green, maybe
Yeah.
because they have green on their business card.
Right.
know,
Yeah. So that's greenwashing. So
Those are
yes,
called
you have to
greenwashing.
be sensitive to greenwashing, where a company represents itself as being green when
How do you,
they're not.
How do you do enough due diligence on it?
They have corporate reports. That's one thing you can get on. Look at a corporation's corporate reports, or their what they call it, their report on social responsibility reports.
And
You
make
can
sure
look at
that the paper that it comes on is from
Exactly.
recycled. You know,
Right.
So
that's a
that's
good
what I'm
start.
saying.
Right?
So we kind of talked about the low carbon energy sector, wind, tide, solar, biofuels, geothermal, and I think you mentioned that that market's pretty big. It's about $38 billion a year. Now you also mentioned a few other ones, but one you haven't really mentioned is the pollution control sector. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Right. So the pollution control sector, currently, when I looked it up, it's this year, or I should say in 2011, it was worth about $176 billion, mainly in Europe. And that's a financial market where they're trading, basically, they're doing carbon offsets.
Oh yeah.
Okay. And so that's big in Europe, not so big here.
Coming to a country near
Near
you.
you.
Yeah.
Right.
But so that is one form of pollution controls, which is a financial one. There are other forms of pollution controls and technologies. Now, see, one form of pollution control would be, which is called carbon capture and sequestration. It's just a technology right now. It hasn't proven itself, but if it does, that market, that technology will be greater than the carbon control financial market, because that market carbon trading would go away, because you could capture the carbon and sequester it and put it, I don't know, they're talking about
So you
putting
wouldn't-
it
you
in the
wouldn't need it
mines.
to
You
trade
wouldn't,
it,
you
right?
wouldn't need to trade it.
What-
So that
what-
market would go away.
And then what about you mentioned transportation. Where could you invest in the transportation sector?
Oh, in transportation, you're talking rail and shipping. You're looking for a transportation technology that is very fuel efficient, that's cost efficient. So rail is a class, not coal, clean coal. Yeah. No,
Electric
so you're
chainsaw,
talking about
plug it into the wall
you're
and
talking
let it go.
about shipping. You're talking about rail, and not really trucking.
Now you said shipping via ocean liner.
Ocean
shipping?
liner
But
shipping.
I thought that was pretty environmentally bad.
So yeah, so those those ships use a lot of bunker fuel, and they produce a lot of particulate pollutants. But
And-
currently, they're going back to an old idea,
it was-
sailing, right?
Sailing, yeah.
Sailing ships. So they're looking at sailing these things with using sails, or currently big kites, and
That's
sailing them
amazing.
across the ocean. And they've successfully done it across the Pacific, and they've currently successfully done it across the Atlantic.
It works in Disneyland with the Peter Pan one. You get in a ship there and it sails right through.
Right, and there are now hybrid boats. I believe not to plug a company, but to plug a company, Hornblower right now. They have actually created and are working hybrid ferries in New York and going to Alcatraz. So there you go.
Well, example, hybrid cars, that would reduce your, I believe, if you look at the notes, our show notes, it say that the average person emits about 2.5 tons of carbon just driving around. If you were to go to a hybrid vehicle, you could basically cut that in half. You could cut your personal emissions in half. So
That's
look
save
for
on
those
gas.
kind of look out for those kind of technologies, basically.
So, Benny, are you of the opinion that really, there's things we can really do as a society to cut down on global warming emissions and actually have an impact to prevent some of the things we're talking about that are likely to happen in the future, rising sea levels, et cetera, or are you one who would be of the position that it's likely going to happen, the handwriting's on the wall, we're not going to be able to change globally as humans, and that we just should prepare ourselves for it?
So the damage that's been done has been done.
Yeah.
This is my personal, it's been done, but there's no reason to make it worse. So there's no reason to let it get out of control. So they're saying that this recognized 2-degree change is there. It exists. It's due to human influence. But if we can hold our emissions to past standards, which that's a high target to hold. Okay.
Does it look like we're trending in that direction?
No, it's not.
Okay.
It's not. We're not trending in that direction. Actually, the U.S. and Europe is trending in that direction, but globally, if you want to talk globally, there's a giant increasing middle class in India and in China, and that's all coal fired, which is a major source of that greenhouse gas.
Yeah, they're building a coal-fired plant once a week in China right now. Every
Really?
week, a brand new coal-fired plant gets up and running.
Is the United States going to not put up with that, or are we going to try to influence that at all?
Well, the
We're
idea
flying
is,
to Mars.
you know,
Yeah. Exactly.
can the United States really say to a developing country,
Yeah.
you don't have the right to develop? We got our standard of living, but you can't create yours.
No, you can't, right? But what if you had a technology that you could export to them? What if you had an
Yeah,
industry?
Exactly.
Germany right now is really poised to take advantage. In my opinion, Germany right now is really poised to take advantage of this. After Fukushima, they cut off. Angela Merkel unilaterally basically had 7 of the power plants, the nuclear power plants, shut off. So we're going to go to renewable sources of energy. And currently, I mean, overnight, basically, since Fukushima, the country of Germany gets 20% of its energy from renewable sources, basically wind.
Well, yeah, I mean, personally, I'm a conservationist. I'm not an environmentalist as the technical term, but I recycle as much as I can. I reuse paper clips and stuff like that, probably because I'm cheap. But
You said it.
you said I did. Okay. Well, you guys, we're going to have to cut out here. Benny, thank you very
All right.
much for
Thanks for having
giving
me.
us
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
interesting, more than just tidbits on the environment. All right,
stuff.
here's some thoughts for the day. Should you believe a chronic liar if he admits that he is a chronic liar? And why is it that dogs love to hang their head out of the car window but will get mad at you if you blow in their face? I don't get it. Okay, next week we might have the answer to these thought-provoking questions. And with that, tune in next week to The Best of Investing. We're going to be giving away 9 more free vacations for answering trivia questions. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm Edward Brown, wishing you the best of investing. So long. Excellent.
All right.
Thank you very much,
Cool.
Benny.
I hope we didn't get too far afield.
No,
No,
that was
no,
great.
no, it's
That
good.
was great.